Okay, this section is about strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats. What I'm going to do, this is section 5.3 in your guidelines. What I'm going to do is I'm going to separate them a little bit first. I'm just going to talk about strengths and weaknesses first, and then I'll talk about opportunities and threats. First, strengths and weaknesses. When we talk about strengths and weaknesses, we are only talking about the internal environment of the organization. And we are assessing the strengths and weaknesses of the resources. That's what we're assessing, are the resources. And as you learned in your economics class, there's land, labor, and capital. Well, those are the traditional definitions of a resource. But in organizational behavior, we actually go and look at other things besides land, labor, and capital. We also look at things like morale, job satisfaction. Well, talk to us about training and leadership and management style. What about absenteeism or turnover? What about the idea of communication and or values and people having a common perspective or a common set of values? What about the organizational culture? Is there a very harmonious workplace, or is it very toxic and harassing? These are what we call organizational behavior, soft resources, and they're very important. So when you are doing your strengths and weaknesses, make sure that you identify internal resources from those perspectives. I also want to encourage you to qualify all your statements. So if you were to say, for example, John is an experienced manager, period, and that's your very first strength. My question back to you would be, so what? Who cares? He's experienced, so he's old. That's not an advantage. That's not a resource strength. Until you tell me and qualify that statement, it means nothing to me. So you need to think a little bit further. How is having an experienced manager, in this case John, how is John's experience creating a contribution as a resource? And remember, what do resources do for an organization? Resources are brought in to either make money or save money. So if John isn't either making any money or saving money, then he's not a resource at all. So tie his experience into making money, saving money. So you can do it by saying it this way. You rewrite that sentence and you say, John is an experienced manager, comma. This is a strength because, and now you explain, okay? His experience allows the organization to resolve issues quickly, and by saving time in that way, he basically saves the organization money because time is not being wasted and problems are being resolved quickly. So you have to qualify all your statements. So you're probably thinking, well, God, that's going to be a real long statement. Well, it's going to be 2 or 3 potential sentences at the most. But yeah, it'll be a lot longer than 2 or 3 words, absolutely. That's called qualifying. So every time you do a strength or weakness statement, I want you to think of me saying, so, how is it either making me money or saving me money? If I'm the corporation, how is it doing that? How is that statement either making money or saving money for the organization? Okay? So that's your strengths and weaknesses. Now for your opportunities and threats. Your opportunities and threats are assessing the external market factors only. Political, environmental, social, technological, legal, and typically it's called a PEST analysis. Political is your P, economical is your E, social is your S, technological is your T. I would even argue that there's an L in there for legal, okay? And so you assess your strengths and weaknesses, or pardon me, your opportunities and threats by way of these kinds of elements only. Your perspective is looking at that market from an industry's perspective. Now we do that because we need to understand that our corporation organization does not exist in a vacuum. It exists within a market. It exists as being part of an industry. So we have to see how our corporation, our organization has strengths or weaknesses, how that organization is existing within this complement of an industry. If you've studied Michael Porter's 5 Forces, one of the things that he did, Michael Porter's a professor out of Harvard, and what he did with his analysis was he said that we have to look at the health of an industry to understand how organizations succeed. We have to appreciate that they exist within an industry, and his research showed that anywhere from 10 to 20% on the average, that 10 to 20% of a firm's profitability can be attributed to the industry within which it operates. So in other words, you can just open up the door of a franchise like a Tim Hortons, and 10 to 20 cents on every dollar will not be because of anything you have done. All you did was open the door of a successful franchise. And the industry is healthy in terms of fast foods and also in terms of drive-through coffee, coffee shops. It's a healthy industry. So by just virtue of the franchise you bought and hopefully the location that you purchased it in, 10 cents to 20 cents on the dollar is profit in your pocket, and you've done nothing. So we have to take a look at how your company exists within a complement of an industry. So one of the first things I want to identify when you are looking at your opportunities and threats is, what is the industry? It's got to be the Canadian blank industry. The Canadian organic food industry is the industry for the Ottawa Valley case, but what is it for the case that you're reading? So I want you to reflect and think about, what is this industry that we're talking about for this particular case, because that is what you have to assess for your external market factors for your opportunities and threats. Alright, so when you're doing your opportunities and threats, what I want you to do is I want you to think of, let's just pick an economic. Let's say we're going to look at economics first. Alright, so you're going to try to figure out the economic condition of a situation. If I were to write, and this is where we get into hypothetical statements for opportunities and threats. If there was an economic recession that took place at the time that your case is being analyzed and that case is taking place, and if you assume it's taking place in today's day and age, 2010, 2011, whatever, if you make the assumption that you're in a current timeline, then how is an economic recession going to affect the whole industry? Because a recession will definitely have a threat in terms of potential sales for all the market contributors, all the members of the industry. If there's a recession, will experience a shrinking of their market. If, however, there is, let's say, wonderful economic growth, the whole industry will experience the growth. Not just your particular firm, but all the industry members will experience growth, okay? Because everyone will experience the opportunity. So, let's say that our statement is, what if there is an economic recession that's coming down the pipe? What are we going to do? So what you would do is state, well, this is a threat, and it's a threat to the Canadian organic food industry, and that all the members should anticipate a potential decrease in sales, and as a result, what's being threatened? Market share and potential revenues. Okay, so I encourage you to think of your opportunities and threats in terms of the pest analysis. Use that as a guideline. But pest is a cognitive process. You don't do a pest analysis, for example, on your analysis for my class. All I want is opportunities and threat statements. Okay. And by the way, let me just turn that off. One of the things that I want you to also be able to do is go to the handout that I've given you on what is a good opportunities and threat statements and what to use as a guideline, and also go back to the one that's posted online, and that'll help you out. Okay? Thank you very much.